Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is another edition of World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the global curve. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hem Kaur Soro. And on World DNA today, as the war between Israel and Hamas rages on, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told US President Joe Biden that Israel does not have any choice but to unleash a ground operation in Gaza, saying we have to go in.
Things are going to get more heated up. Now, the hostage situation remains a top concern in this conflict, with Hamas saying civilian hostages would be executed and the killings broadcast in case of Israel targeting people in Gaza without prior warning. We will get you the latest on this as well. All this and more in the next 60 minutes on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines first.
At least 900 Israelis and 687 Palestinians killed after Hamas fighters breached the border from Gaza in an unprecedented attack on Saturday.
Hamas threatens to start killing hostages if Israeli army carry out airstrikes without prior warning targeting Gaza Strip residents.
European Union announces it will not suspend payment of development aid to Palestinians amid widespread criticism, reverses course after earlier announcement.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas expected to visit Moscow. Palestinian envoy to Moscow informs Russian news media.
US President Joe Biden grilled as part of an investigation into handling of classified documents found at his home and former private office.
US stocks shrug off concerns from Israel-Hamas war. Dow Jones Industrial Average ends Monday's session up nearly 200 points. S&P 500 climbs 0.6%.
Two-time World Cup finalists New Zealand make it 2 wins in 2 at the Cricket World Cup. The Kiwis beat the Netherlands by 99 runs, with Mitchell Santner taking the tournament's first 5-wicket haul. And on World DNA, we continue with our continuous coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. Israel, it's come under the worst attack it's seen in decades. Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to crush the enemy.
And that is the Hamas rulers of Gaza Strip and raze them to ruins. And now the Israeli military has already announced a total siege of the Gaza Strip. Over 300,000 Israeli reservists have also been called up, hinting at a possible full-blown invasion of Gaza. Now, in the latest, reports have emerged hinting at Israel getting a potential green signal from the US to go into Gaza.
Right. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly told US President Joe Biden that they have no choice but to unleash a ground operation in Gaza. And according to source-based reports, the Israeli Prime Minister told Biden, I'm quoting here, "We have to go in, we cannot negotiate now." Netanyahu added that Israel had no other choice but to respond with force because the country cannot show weakness in the Middle East, and that Israel needs to restore deterrence.
Reports say Biden, on his part, did not try to press Netanyahu or convince him not to go through with a ground operation. Now, the telephonic conversation reportedly took place on Sunday, a day after Hamas unleashed a major multi-pronged attack on Israel that took the world by surprise. Now, Netanyahu has already warned of a long and difficult war ahead in response to the attack.
Now, during his call with Netanyahu, Biden reportedly raised the issue of hostages in Gaza. Reports say Biden also asked Netanyahu about a scenario in which a second front is opened along the Israeli-Lebanese border.
Now, a green signal from the US was crucial in deciding the course of the war. Washington has already announced sending a carrier strike group near Israel. Military aircraft are also headed to near Israel with munitions, but US officials have not specified the number and the types. Now, while the White House maintains that it won't send troops into Israel, though.
Meanwhile, U.S. stocks largely shrugged off concerns from Israel-Hamas war. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended Monday's session up nearly 200 points, and the S&P 500 that climbed 0.6%. Energy stocks rallied on the back of a 4% jump in oil prices. Defense names also rose broadly. The iShares US Aerospace and Defense ETF jumped 4.5%, with Northrop Grumman surging 11%.
All right, for more on this, we're being joined by Jason Greenblatt, who's a former chief legal officer to Donald Trump and his advisor in Israel. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Having me.
Mr. Greenblatt, let's start with this. To begin with, what is your assessment of the talks between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Joe Biden? What does the green signal here implicate?
Well, first of all, I don't think Israel needs a green signal from the White House. I do think President Biden has been very strong in his condemnation of the attack and telling Israel that he and the United States will do anything and everything they need to do for Israel. I hope that he will carry that out. But Israel does need to do whatever it needs to do. They were invaded by terrorists, by nearly 1,000 terrorists who broke through a fence, who came in through hand gliders, who went apartment to apartment, killing mothers and fathers and grandparents and children, killing concert goers, all civilians, grabbing them, bringing them back. They killed about 900 people at the latest count. By the way, I take issue with how you started the story. You counted the number of Israelis and Palestinians dead. Well, the Israelis were all attacked by terrorists, by Hamas terrorists, by Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The Palestinians who died were either the terrorists themselves or deaths because Israel is now retaliating for this atrocious, atrocious attack. But I think the United States, as well as many other countries around the world, are standing by Israel. They understand the gravity of the situation, the barbaric and horrible and vicious attacks. Mm-hmm. And I think that Israel will need to do what it needs to do to protect its civilians. That's what any government must do.
All right, sir. That being said, Hamas has threatened to kill hostages if Israel bombs Gaza without prior warning. Several of the hostages are foreign nationals as well from several nations. Talk to us about this. How do you think this will change the course of the war?
I'm not sure that it can. I think it's an extraordinarily challenging and difficult situation for Israel. Mm-hmm. I think you can't negotiate with animals, with barbaric people who do this. Israel will try to be careful. They'll try to save every single one of those hostages, but we all know the reality. The reality is they've already separated those hostages. They've hidden them away. It's an impossible situation, and the demands that Hamas is going to ask of them are going to be unrealistic. Israel can't sit idly by and let Hamas continue to attack them. Even today, there were more attacks. So while Israel will do whatever it can to save the hostages and spare them and hopefully rescue them, perhaps even with the help of the United States, they just can't not defend themselves. No country would do that.
Mr. Greenblatt, Hamas said that the group is open to discussions over a possible truce with Israel, having achieved its targets. So I just wanted to take your thoughts on this. What do you think Hamas has achieved with this entire operation? And also, is there truce anywhere on the cards in the near future or in the far future?
I can't see how a truce helps anything. There's always been this sort of back and forth where Hamas fires some rockets, Israel attacks, and things get quiet for a period of time. But this is the first time Hamas successfully invaded Israel, killed 1,000 people. Let's think about that. In the United States, that would probably be worth the equivalent of about 40,000 people, given Israel's population size. How do you have a truce with people who are terrorists, with people who are savages? You cannot have a truce like that. Israel has to go in and clean up the terrorist infrastructure so they don't face this again, so Hamas and other terrorists don't ever think about doing this again. What would India do if they were attacked by a neighbor like this? Would they accept the attack and the deaths and the kidnapped civilians?
Well,
and then just say, okay, let's have
in India, of course, India has guarded its borders, definitely. But I understand what you're trying to say regarding the Israeli sentiment. So as far as the truce is concerned, definitely, as you're saying, it won't help either way.
Correct.
Mr. Greenblatt, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your perspective on this. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Moving on now, as Israel's war with Gaza's militant group Hamas spills into its fourth day. At this moment, developments coming in from the war front, the death toll on the Israeli side, that's climbed to 900, as I mentioned earlier.
Exactly, while over 687 Palestinians have been killed as well. The Hamas militant group has now declared that it will begin executing hostages. Listen into the message that the Hamas group has released recently.
فإنه ومن هذه الساعة
From this moment, we announce that for every attack towards our people who are safe in their homes, without previous warning, unfortunately, we will have to execute one of the civilian enemy captives that we have hostage. And we will be forced to broadcast this in video and audio. We announce this decision and we hold the responsibility in front of the whole world to the Zionist enemy and its leadership. They are responsible for this decision.
Worrying updates coming in on the hostage situation as the militants threaten to execute captured Israelis unless the Israeli airstrikes on Gaza are stopped. This as mediators from Qatar are still leading negotiations with the militant group since Saturday. Qatar's foreign ministry has revealed that the country is involved in mediation talks between Hamas and Israeli authorities. Till Monday, there was a possibility of female prisoner swap. Qatar has been leading these negotiations with the US involvement since Saturday last week.
But what is that Hamas wants from these negotiations? What are they looking to get in return for setting the hostages free? Now, several reports indicate that Hamas' first order of business at the negotiation table is securing the release of 36 Palestinian women. However, a spokesperson for the militant group has said that the objective is to secure the return of all Palestinian prisoners in Israel.
Over the years, Israeli security forces have arrested and imprisoned more than 5,000 Palestinians, including women and children. Here's where the tally stands. Total number of Palestinians languishing in Israeli prisons stands at 5,200. Out of the total, 33 prisoners are women and 170 of those in jail are Palestinian children.
Now, a 2022 UN report reveals that since 1967, which is the year when Israel seized control of East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip and West Bank, Israeli forces have arrested an estimated 1 million Palestinians. A past trend indicates that if the Palestinian prisoners are tried, they get prosecuted in Israel's military courts.
Moving on, our nations worldwide are scrambling to find citizens who may have been killed or taken hostage when militants from Gaza surged across the Israeli border on Saturday.
Israel has confirmed the attackers took soldiers and civilians hostage, but their numbers and nationalities have not been confirmed. Officials say over 100 were taken, but the number can be much higher than that, while Hamas claims the number stands at around 130.
This Nepali family is mourning their children who died in the Israel-Hamas war. They were among the total of over 1,500 killed so far. According to Nepalese authorities, at least 10 Nepali students in Israel were killed during strikes. As countries begin to put evacuation plans in action, many from the ones who were abducted are believed to be foreign nationals. Mexico and Poland are among the first to deploy planes for evacuating its nationals from the war-torn country. Several countries, including the United States, Thailand, France, the United Kingdom and Nepal, to name a few, have confirmed deaths and number of nationals missing. The biggest conundrum of the conflict so far are the hostages taken by the Hamas militant group. As the news of sexual and physical abuse of hostages starts coming out, Israel's options of retaliatory actions become narrower. The hostages not only give Hamas the upper hand in negotiations, but will now be used as bait and sacrificial objects against Israel. Since the exact location of these hostages remains unknown, this seems to be working in their favor. And as the war rages on, it's the involvement of Hezbollah that has raised many questions. Shivan has all the details. Over to you, Shivan.
There are a lot of questions regarding Hezbollah. Who are they? Why are they involved here? And that's what we're going to tackle. Israel and Hezbollah have already traded fire this week, but they have stopped short of the devastating full-scale war they fought in 2006, a repeat of which would force Israel's military to fight on two fronts, stretching its forces thin. Now, founded in the chaos of the 15-year Lebanese civil war, the Iran-backed group, that is Hezbollah, is driven by its opposition to Israel and its resistance to Western influence in West Asia. Here's all you need to know about who Hezbollah is. Now, Iran's Revolutionary Guards founded Hezbollah in 1982. The Iran established the group to export its Islamic revolution and fight Israeli forces that had invaded Lebanon, sharing the Shia Islamist ideology. Hezbollah recruited among Lebanese Shia Muslims. Now, Hezbollah kept its weapons at the end of the civil war to fight Israeli forces in future, occupying the predominantly Shia south. Years of guerrilla warfare led Israel to withdraw in the year 2006. Now, Hezbollah demonstrated its military advances in 2006 during a 5-week war. This is what happened in 2006 with Israel, which erupted after it crossed into Israel, kidnapping 2 soldiers and killing others as well. Now, the war killed 1,200 people in Lebanon, mostly civilians, and over 150 Israelis, mostly soldiers. Hezbollah fired thousands of rockets into Israel at that time as well. Now, its military power grew after being deployed to Syria in 2012 to help President Bashar al-Assad fight mostly Sunni rebels. So they got involved there as well. Now, Hezbollah boasts of precision rockets in its arsenal and maintains that it can hit all parts of Israel at any given point of time. It's a constant threat to Israel. Now, take a look at this figure. In 2021, Hezbollah leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah said that the group had as many as 100,000 fighters. Hezbollah gets weapons and money from Iran. Now, that is definitely a question that comes. Who backs Hezbollah? It is Iran, and that's not a secret anymore. The United States estimates Iran allocates hundreds of millions of dollars to Hezbollah annually. Now, Hezbollah has deep ties to other Iran-backed groups as well around the region. The group has ties with Palestinian factions, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and hence the connection with the recent attack we've seen over Israel. Now, coming to the recent deadly attack, as it unfolded on Saturday, Hezbollah said it was in direct contact with the leadership of the Palestinian resistance. Hezbollah has trained Iran-backed groups in Iraq and takes part in fighting there as well. Now, Saudi Arabia, that is another nation in West Asia, it is another arch rival of the group. And it says that Hezbollah has also fought in support of the Iran-allied Houthis in Yemen, which Hezbollah denies. Now, Hezbollah has played an essential role in the recent war that we're seeing that Israel is very much engulfed in. What role they'll play in future and how this all unfolds will get you everything on World DNA. Back to you, Him.
Thank you so much for all those updates, Shivan. Now, it's been more than 72 hours since Hamas launched its biggest operation in Israel. Both the sides are firing air missiles towards each other. Be it a mortar strike or a drone strike, Israel even carried out airstrikes along its northern border as it responded to mortar fire from Lebanon. It also carried out deadly airstrikes and pounded hundreds of locations in Gaza. A day after suffering its bloodiest attack in decades, when Hamas fighters rampaged through Israeli towns, killing hundreds and abducting an unknown number of others. But seeing the situation unfolding in West Asia, there are fears that the conflict could quickly spread in the region. The scale of the attack, it's prompted fears that a wider conflict could break out between Israel and other factions opposed to it, including Lebanon's Hezbollah and armed groups backed by Iran that have previously clashed with Israel.
And it's not just the fear of Hezbollah. Experts have warned that the Taliban regime in Afghanistan could also join the conflict here. Meanwhile, across West Asia, there were demonstrations in support of Hamas, while Iran and Hezbollah praised the attack. Militant group Hezbollah also told Hamas, "Our guns and rockets are with you."
On the other hand, Western countries led by the United States have denounced the attack by Hamas, while President Joe Biden issued a blunt warning to Iran and other countries. He said that this is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks.
Moreover, the war in Israel has slammed doors on the cautious US-Iran thaw, while making limited headway on the key issue of Iran's nuclear program. US officials have alluded to tacit understanding with Tehran to turn down the temperature. In fact, days before the attack, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan pulled out a long list of positive developments in West Asia, while adding that these developments are allowing the Biden administration to focus on other regions and problems. And now this has happened.
But less than 2 weeks later, Hamas launched its surprise attack against Israel, leaving US diplomats scrambling to try and contain the outbreak of violence from spreading in the region.
The European Union will not suspend payment of development aid to Palestinians, and the announcement comes 5 hours after the bloc said it would freeze all aid payment.
The previous announcement was met with widespread criticism. EU earlier announced that it was putting all $730 million of development aid to Palestinians under review. The EU later said it would review payments to ensure they're not being misused. The bloc of European nations offered no explanation for the reversal.
Now, the previous decision to suspend aid was made public by EU Commissioner Oliver Verhelyi on social media platform X. He clearly mentioned that all aid to Palestine will be immediately suspended. His announcement took several member states by surprise, with Spain, Ireland and Luxembourg expressing dissent and critics accusing the EU of punishing all Palestinians for an attack by Hamas.
The Hamas militant group that controls the Gaza Strip launched a surprise attack on the 7th of October. Hundreds have been killed in the attacks and counterattacks that have followed. The EU had also firmly reiterated that it does not send aid directly or indirectly to Hamas. So the purpose of the cuts in aid came under question as well. But hours later, Commissioner said there will be no suspension of payments, but individual member states have, however, stood on their decision to suspend aid to Palestine.
Germany and Austria were among those who announced halting the aid for the 2.1 million Palestinians. Neither the EU Commission, Germany or Austria differentiated between Gaza and the much larger West Bank run by the Western-backed Palestinian Authority.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. Lots more on the other side. The Israel-Gaza crisis is creating new headaches for the White House administration. Joe Biden's critics have already started lining up the blame for violence in Israel at the president's feet. We'll get you all you need to know and what to expect.
Also on the other side, global financial risks emanating from the escalating Israel-Hamas conflict, in addition to the war in Ukraine, are pointing towards a worsening global economic outlook. More details on this on the other side. Do stay tuned.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation. You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. Let's start by looking at the headlines first.
After hours of intense bombardment by Israeli jets, Hamas militants who control Gaza say it would execute an Israeli captive for every civilian house bombed without warning.
Hundreds of people take part in a march in support of Israel in the capital of Argentina, which lost at least 7 citizens in attacks by militant group Hamas that left hundreds dead.
A mass funeral ceremony for around 300 earthquake victims is held in rural western Afghanistan as families remain trapped in the rubble of their ruined homes 2 days after high magnitude tremors killed more than 2,000 people.
Cricket is all set to make a return at the Olympics after 128 years. The LA Organizing Committee, in its proposal to the IOC, has recommended sports T20 format as well as 4 other sports for the 2028 Games.
Israel's defense forces say that the ongoing situation is no less than America's 9/11 attacks and is in fact rather worse than that.
And with all these developments, it's a sign that the world may have fallen into a new period of disarray. So as nations continue to step up their security measures, political groups like Hamas are willing to take big risks rather than fearing the consequences would be too dire.
Now, the crisis is creating new headaches for the Biden administration, sharpening the focus on the current turmoil in Congress and threatening to add an extra level of unpredictability to the 2024 U.S. elections. Joe Biden's critics have already started lining up the blame for violence in Israel at the president's feet.
And pro-Palestine demonstrators who marched downtown in Chicago too called for the U.S. government to stop being an ally to Israel.
We know that the United States government historically and continues to often stand on the wrong side of issues. They're standing on the wrong side of this issue. The United States government was wrong on apartheid in South Africa, if you remember, and the United States government is wrong on Israeli apartheid.
Has the current war brought setbacks to President Biden's efforts to bring stability to West Asia? Experts believe that by bypassing the Palestinian issue and by pushing to normalize diplomatic relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, U.S. may have been a contributing factor in the Hamas attack.
So while the American public tends to pay slight attention to events abroad, the horrifying images of civilian deaths from West Asia, including the death and hostages number of American citizens, has shifted focus from the U.S. politics.
Now, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani elucidates on how the Biden administration's broader response to the Israel-Hamas conflict has been. Listen in.
While President Biden has expressed America's unwavering support for Israel in the wake of those gruesome attacks by Hamas militants, it's no secret that the carnage in the Middle East is one of the most volatile geopolitical challenges this administration will face. 2 years ago, when something like this happened between the Israelis and Palestinians, the United States was able to broker some kind of ceasefire with the help of allies in the region. It's hard to imagine that talks of a ceasefire would even be appropriate in the situation that we're in right now. As one analyst said, Japan also was open to a ceasefire after its attack on Pearl Harbor, and another analyst said, imagine if the United States was looking for some kind of ceasefire after 9/11. It's no secret that personal relations between President Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been strained in recent months, notably due to Israel's internal politics. And it's also no secret that that peace deal that the Biden administration was hoping to negotiate between Israel and Saudi Arabia is well in the water right now. There's also another challenge. The United States does not really have a viable partner from the Palestinian side to deal with. And then, of course, the Biden administration opened itself to criticism after that prisoner swap with Iran and the release of $6 billion in frozen assets. So how this administration will deal with the challenges it faces in the Middle East is something not only Biden's opponents here in the United States will be watching, but allies in the region, around the world as well, and not to mention voters.
Now, Susan further explains what the impact of this conflict would be on President Biden's prospects for the presidential elections next year. Listen to this.
While presidential elections don't generally hinge on foreign policy issues, the recent assault against Israel by Hamas undercuts President Biden's assertion that the world is a safer place under his watch and because of his foreign policy chops. That attack against Israel by Hamas militants was not only due to an intelligence failure by Israel, but by the United States as well. And now President Biden is facing criticism from his opponents that global troubles are only multiplying under his watch. This comes at a time when the majority of Americans are growing weary of American support to Ukraine, notably arms sales. And it also comes at a time when an Air Force general recently said that the U.S. and China may go to war by the year 2025. And let's not forget that a peace initiative that the Biden administration was hoping to broker between Israel and the Saudis, well, after the Hamas attack against Israel and Israel's retaliation, that seems to be in the water as well. When President Biden recently made a deal with Iran as part of a prisoner swap to release $6 billion in frozen assets, former U.S. President Donald Trump said that that would be an incentive for other bad actors in the region to act the same. We now learn that not only did 9 Americans die in Israel, but there are some that are being held hostage by Hamas as well. Now, with RFK Jr. announcing his bid for 2024 president as an independent, moving away from the Democratic Party, voters may have an alternative to the current president, notably if they don't want to vote Republican.
Also in other news coming in from the United States, U.S. President Joe Biden has been quizzed as a part of an independent investigation into his handling of classified documents, according to the White House. The investigation is being carried out by special counsel Robert Hur.
The U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed her to look into the mishandling of classified documents at Biden's home in Delaware and also at a Washington think tank office that was set up for Biden after his 2009 to 2017 vice presidency. Now, according to the White House spokesperson Ian Sams, the interview was a voluntary one. It was conducted at the White House over Sunday and Monday.
Now, Sam restated that fact that Biden and the White House were very cooperative during the entire investigation. He further said, I'm quoting here, "We have provided relevant updates publicly, being as transparent as we can, consistent with protecting and preserving the integrity of the investigation."
Now, the White House declined further comments here, referring any other questions to the U.S. Justice Department. This is not the first time a U.S. president has been interviewed in a criminal investigation. George W. Bush sat for a 70-minute interview as part of an investigation into the leak of the identity of a CIA operative. In 1998, Bill Clinton was a part of an interview that went on for more than 4 hours.
Now, in the latest, the investigation into the handling of the classified documents also includes former President Donald Trump, who's facing charges in his case. He refused for an interview and instead his lawyer submitted answers to written questions.
At a record level, it's an epidemic, and they waste their time on this. And
All right, over to our business segment. The risks emanating from the escalating Israel-Hamas conflict, in addition to the Ukraine war, clearly point to a worsening global economic outlook.
Now, just when the world was starting to recover somewhat from the war in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas conflict came as a severe economic risk that's reflected in a surge in crude prices, which is likely to push up elevated inflation even further.
Global central banks had called for higher interest rates for longer, even before the Israel tensions. Now, it looks more likely that global rates will remain at these high levels longer than previously anticipated. The US Federal Reserve will not be an exception, and that will weigh on any upbeat mood from positive economic data in recent weeks.
Now, all of those factors will hurt the overall global economy and in turn weigh on global households already dealing with stretched budgets from elevated inflation. The cost of living crisis in several countries, including the UK, is likely to get worse.
A separate report showed that fears the German economy relapsed into recession in the third quarter have increased as a result of the fourth consecutive monthly decline in industrial production. Looking ahead, German industrial output is expected to continue drifting sideways rather than picking up speed anytime soon.
Carsten Reski, the global head of Marco at ING Markets, said, and I'm quoting here, the stagnating economy after 2 quarters of contraction gave hope to some that the economy was improving. However, hard data for July and August had nothing to be cheerful about.
Now, poor production estimates, small order books and large inventories in Germany indicate that recession risks remain uncomfortably high. To make matters worse, the August data is representative of the state of Europe's largest economy, even before the latest Israel-Hamas war. With the Ukraine war showing no signs of abating, the already disrupted supply chains will be rattled further here. The latest geopolitical conflict has the potential to derail the world economy.
And as violence rages and security concerns soar in the region, the country's high-flying tech industry is finding itself in the crosshairs.
From stock and bond prices taking hit to the closure of numerous businesses, the immediate impact is evident. But beyond this, there's a growing concern that tech companies may face disruptions from the conflict expanding further.
With the possibility of staff at tech companies being called up as military reservists, a new layer of unpredictability has been added to the equation. Security measures are being ramped up as tech companies operating in Israel grapple with mounting concerns. Given the close ties between technology spending and the military, safeguarding physical installations, that has become a top priority.
While some companies like Intel and Nvidia have responded swiftly by taking steps to protect their workforce and assets, others remain tight-lipped about the situation's potential long-term effects. All right, in our tech segment today, cyber attacks are on the rise, and it is not just the commoners who are being affected.
Now, it has come to light that Indian Space Research Organization, commonly known as ISRO, faces over 100 cyber attacks daily, with the risk of cyber attacks being much higher in rocket technology.
S. Somnath, the chairman of ISRO, has said that India's space agency faces more than 100 cyber attacks on a daily basis. Interestingly, the possibility of cyber attacks is much higher in rocket technology. And why is that? Rocket technology uses ultra-modern software and chip-based hardware, a Pandora's box for any cyber criminal. So what is ISRO doing to stop these cyber attacks? Now, Somnath revealed that ISRO regularly conducts various tests focusing on the safety of the hardware chips inside their rockets.
Meanwhile, upgrading a satellite safety mechanism once it has been launched is one of the major issues faced by ISRO. A satellite is launched in space with several sets of software and hardware with a designated life of 15 years. Somnath said, and we quote, post the completion of these 15 years, most of these satellites become vulnerable as the technology becomes dated. It is not possible to upgrade the software of a satellite in space remotely. The hardware of old generation satellites is especially vulnerable. Future satellites can be made with the latest technology, but they will also become dated after some years. So it is a contentious problem. The ISRO chief added that cyber criminals are now using sophisticated AI technology to penetrate ISRO's firewall. S. Somnath had said, advanced technology is both a boon and a threat at the same time. Moving on now, conventional therapy session consists of a patient, human therapist. I say human because AI has now taken over therapy as well.
Well, popular chatbot ChatGPT now conducts therapy sessions, but are they good enough? Now, that is definitely a question that needs to be answered. A manager at the AI firm OpenAI, Lilian Wang, recently caused quite a stir when she shared her unexpected encounter with OpenAI's popular chatbot ChatGPT. In a tweet or a post on X, Wang described her conversation with ChatGPT as a quite emotional, personal conversation. Her post raised eyebrows and sparked a debate here as well.
Now, research conducted by MIT and Arizona State University supports Wang's opinion about ChatGPT. The team conducted the research on over 300 participants. Each participant was asked to interact with mental health AI chatbot program. Researchers divided the participants then into 3 separate groups. The first group was told that the chatbot is empathetic. The second group was told it's manipulative, while the third group was told it is neutral in its response.
Now, the results revealed that those who believed they were talking to a caring chatbot were more likely to trust their AI therapist. Now, the study highlights a growing trend in the tech world here. Interestingly, the idea of chatbots as therapists dates back to the 1960s. It's not really new.
Right. The first chatbot, called Elisa, was developed to simulate a form of psychotherapy. Nowadays, many companies are working on apps that provide AI-based therapy, companionship, and mental health support. However, this field remains a source of concern. Critics argue that artificial intelligence may fall short in providing genuine emotional support. So, if given a chance, would you opt for AI as a therapist?
All right, over to sports next. Will the world champions finally stand up? England take on Bangladesh in Dharamshala on Tuesday with something resembling a crisis.
Ben Stokes is unlikely to be risked on an outfield that was rated average after the first game. That game was Bangladesh versus Afghanistan, where the Tigers bounced back after a less than impressive performance with the new ball. The Tigers, though, have 2 gun all-rounders in Captain Shakib Al Hasan and Mehdi Hassan Miraz, and they bundled out the Afghans with 156 with Bangladesh, knocking over those runs in under 35 overs.
Now, the outfield came in for much criticism after that game, with players visibly struggling while fielding or attempting to put in a dive.
I think it's poor, in my own opinion. I think any time you're sort of talking about being careful diving, or sort of maybe, be careful when you're fielding, so it goes against everything you want to be as a team. You want to dive through a row of houses to save a run. So that's obviously not ideal, the way the surface is, the outfield. But we won't use it as an excuse. We'll adapt to it. But certainly if you feel like you're having to hold yourself back, is not a place you want to be as a team or player or in a World Cup match.
Ben Stokes is England's talisman, but he is recovering from a hip issue, and the condition of the outfield means he won't be risked. The 3 Lions need to get their campaign back on track after suffering a mauling in the tournament opener. New Zealand chased down 283 inside 27 overs, and England's net run rate needs fixing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much looking forward. We know we didn't play as well as we can in the last game, and you're always desperate to put that right, both individually and as a team. So there's plenty of hunger in the group, and we're excited to get back on the field.
Bangladesh will be no pushovers, and it isn't just their spinners England will have to be wary about. 60% of wickets taken in the last 12 months are down to the pace bowlers. The Tigers famously beat England in the 2015 edition and also managed to win a game against the world champions in a home series earlier this year. And New Zealand are the first team with 2 wins at the Cricket World Cup after beating Netherlands by 99 runs in Hyderabad.
Mitchell Santner took the first 5-wicket haul of the tournament as the Kiwis delivered yet another convincing win. Now, the Dutch won the toss and opted to bowl first at the Rajiv Gandhi International Stadium. The first 3 overs were maidens, but openers Devon Conway and Will Young then found some rhythm on a tricky wicket. Royaloff Wondermir broke that 67-run stand by dismissing Conway. Young bounced back from his no-show against England by top scoring for the Kiwis with 70. Rachin Ravindra, who scored a century on his World Cup debut against England, was once again among the runs and scored a half-century. There were other useful contributions as well, though. He was not the only one. Daryl Mitchell made 48, while captain Tom Latham scored a half-century. But it seemed like the Kiwis were struggling to switch gears.
However, Mitchell Santner did just that by hammering 37 off just 17 balls and ensuring that the Black Caps got to a formidable total of 322 for 7. Netherlands openers Vikramjit Singh and Max O'Dowd were unable to provide a blistering start. Colin Ackermann top scored with 69, but no other batter was able to lend support. Captain Scott Edwards was the only player to go over a strike rate of 100 as the Dutch side were bowled out for 223, which handed New Zealand a 99-run win.
Santner followed up his heroics with the bat with a 5-wicket haul. Matt Henry took 3 for 40, while Ravindra took a 1 for 46 from his 10.
And now it's time for all the updates from the world of showbiz, for which we have with us Alison Lagrange.
Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you from Durban, South Africa. First up, let's get you the big stories from the world of entertainment.
The Loki Season 2 premiere opened to solid viewership numbers in its first 3 days of availability, and according to Disney, the second season of the series pulled in 10.9 million views in its first 3 days of availability, with the premiere debuting on the 5th of October. The series follows the journey of God of Mischiefs after he escapes from the hands of Avengers in the Avengers Endgame movie.
Next up, Netflix has announced a premiere date for the 6th and final season of The Crown, but it won't be debuting all at once, as it's done with several series in the past. The streamer will split The Crown's last run into 2 parts. The first 4 episodes will premiere on November 16th, and the following 2 parts will be released on December 14th.
The second longest strike in the history of Hollywood is now officially over. The Writers Guild of America has ratified the 3-year contract deal. 99% of union members voted to support the contract in a vote that ended on Monday. The term of the new agreement is from the 25th of September 2023 to the 1st of May 2026.
And that's all from me for today. For now, it's back to our New Delhi studio.
And with that, we call to wrap on this edition of World DNA.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep watching WION World is One. News and updates continue on the other side.